Welcome, listeners, to Passage to Profit, the Inventors Show. Well, my normal co-host, Richard, couldn't make it today, so I have enlisted the wonderful Coach Kenya GIPSON from iHeartRadio to stand in for Richard today. Hey, Kenya.
Hi, how are you? I'm so honored to be here today, standing in for Richard. It's a treat. I hope I don't do a horrible job.
And that has made it an all-women show today, which I think this is the first time that's happened. But I think we can easily carry that off with all these super intelligent, successful women, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, so speaking of super intelligent, successful women, our guest today is going to be Dalia MacPhee. And I'm not going to say too much about her because I like to let people talk about themselves, and you can find out that way. And then our executive spotlight is Gabriella SANTANIELLOW. Same thing. Stay tuned because you'll be able to hear what she has to say about herself in her own words. And then Effie Panagopoulos, and then Stacy Kirk. And Kenya and I will be interviewing them and asking them questions. Oh, and Kenya and I are going to have our little segment in there. Kenya's is Power Move. Mine is I talk about my business Fireside. So it ought to be a very interesting show. It's got a little bit of a fashion twist, I must say, with a little bit of something extra too. So stay tuned. And if for some reason you have to go park, you're listening to this in your car or whatever, the podcast comes out tomorrow. You can also find us on the YouTube channel if you want to see this amazing lineup of gorgeous women. I mean, it's pretty cool today. So Dalia MacPhee, a serial entrepreneur, a success in the fashion world. Dalia, tell us how you're doing it all.
Thanks so much for having me. Well, I guess you know a little bit about me. Do you want the quick 1-minute version, just to recap? So I'm Canadian originally. I started a fashion brand several years ago. Always had a love of fashion, came from an entrepreneurial family. And I had a dream to get into the fashion world. So I created a small brand of about 8 dresses. And I took off to a trade show in Atlanta. Long story short, within a year, my brand could be found in several thousand stores in most major department stores. And it's been, like many people in the business world, I've ridden the roller coaster up and down and up and down. We're still in several major department stores. And over the years, I started kind of trying to renegade some parts of the apparel industry. So we were one of the first mainstream fashion brands to go all vegan. We were also one of the first mainstream fashion brands to offer a full size range in all of our designs. And over the years, I've just kept morphing and growing. So the past several years, I started merging tech with fashion, and we started creating some very cool things with that. We have some cool products, which I'll tell you about, that are going forward. And then as of late, when COVID hit, we, like many businesses, had to take a breather and do a pivot. So we did a pivot in March and went from evening gowns and evening dresses to hospital gowns. And so we've been manufacturing for a few of the major hospital chains across the country, and then also started doing some innovation. So we invented and released a wallet called the antiviral wallet, and then just started innovating, which is something that I love to do. I've been creating as a separate company a lot of innovation, just solving problems here and there.
So an antibacterial or how does it work with the wallet? So it's wallets are disgusting. I think about like where we leave them in general, and then now we have COVID going on. So that's a pretty interesting solution.
Well, what happened was, COVID hit, and then obviously when we started working with some of the hospitals, I started asking what they needed, and I kept hearing at that moment, as everybody in the world heard, there's a shortage of masks. And it's one thing to hear it. It's another when you feel you're a part of it. Speaking to nurses that are crying, saying, I'm going into the COVID ward and I'm literally taking the same mask and using it, all day long. And I'm being told to use it, all week. And they're supposed to actually change it each time they go in and out. So I kind of got to work and thought, what is it that we can do to disinfect these masks, not just for the healthcare workers, but also for all of us that are using cloth masks or the KN95 versions. So basically what this is, and you can see it on our website or also antiviralwallet.com. But basically what it is it's looks like a wallet that you would put your credit cards in, except instead of putting your credit cards in it, you'd put 2 masks, one on each side, and it's thermal lined. So you zip it up, you plug it in the wall, and it heats up the contents inside the wallet to 180 degrees for 30 minutes, killing most bacteria and viruses. It's been tested. We had COVID tested on it, E. coli, and it was incredibly successful. And it's kind of like having clean laundry coming out of. So if you've ever reused a KN95 mask, or even some of the cloth masks, if you are lucky enough to be traveling right now, there's odors, you can't get to a washing machine, and so it's also getting rid of all of that. So so that's one of the products, which was fun to create and produce.
Excellent. So how are you doing with selling it? Are you using the same channels you used for your fashion? Are you using different channels to sell this?
So we produced for a couple of private clients in the healthcare world. We're in discussion actually with a few larger companies going forward. We made it available to the public. It sold out within a couple days. So we're doing a new production run, and we're making calls to some of the bigger chains. So I think that this is here for a while, and I'm 100% for safety, tech, and fashion. I love seeing where is there a problem that we can potentially solve, do it quickly, make it fashionable, make it easy, and make it affordable.
So Dalia, I want to dig down a little bit. For our consumer products listeners, people, inventors of consumer products, how do you sell out in a couple days? How do you let enough people know about it that you sell out in a couple days? Because that's the hardest part. People could have wonderful inventions. How do you get the word out there?
Right. Great question. I think we're all still trying to figure that out a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, obviously, to generate sales, and then online sales are completely different than brick and mortar. And then different to say, in the apparel world, for example, some of our online retailers where they'll do the work. In this particular case, it was the right thing at the right time. We have a pretty big following already from the apparel brand. So I put it through the apparel brand. So it was a bit of word of mouth and a lot of our own. This one was more organic. It was, I didn't even want to take the time because of the urgency, but it's a combo, and I don't know if any of us have quite gotten the formula yet. It's between the Google ads, Facebook ads, social media influencers, we have a large celeb following, which always helps. And I'm still learning that online world myself a bit, because for years our business model was always direct to the retailers, and the retailers handled it. And obviously, being an entrepreneur and in this ever-changing world, we have to keep stepping up and keep growing.
I was just thinking in my head, just trying to visualize how it works. So like you bring it with you wherever you go. Obviously it's portable, right? Is it something that you plug in, or is it something that just kind of sits on its own? Like, how does it work?
So for those of you listening to this on the radio, we love the radio, but you'll be able to see this on Instagram, and you'll be able to see it on our YouTube channel, Passage to Profit Show. So please sign up for our YouTube channel and look for this episode with Dalia MacPhee, and you'll be able to see this incredible device that she's invented that is selling out everywhere.
This is the wallet.
Oh, it's nice. It's fashionable too.
That's what I said. It's vegan. And we made it affordable, by the way. It's like $49.99. Okay. So I'm unzipping it. So you can see it looks like a regular wallet that you would put your credit cards in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm opening it up, and you can see it's lined here, right? It's thermal lined.
Wow.
And this little piece in the middle here, this is where the electronics, the heating pad go. Okay. So what you would do is you would put one mask here, and then you'd put one mask here. It could be a cloth mask. It could be, I love the KN95s, which we also manufacture, but I personally like them because I feel that there's space to breathe, and the filtration. But so you would put one in one, and you could also put coins and money if you wanted. You zip it up.
Money's dirty.
Oh, money's so dirty.
Oh yeah, my girlfriend at the bank is like, "Oh, you wouldn't believe the stuff on money." So
Exactly. So I don't know if you can see here, but there's a little slot for the plug, and then all that happens is you plug it in the wall. You don't have to press any buttons. It turns on automatically. You'll know it's on because you'll be able to feel the heat. And then in 30 minutes, it's going to turn off automatically. And you take your masks out, and they're completely clean. And like I said, aside from the fact that that we've tested them, you can tell the makeup stains are usually gone. There's no odor. It's clean. So, you know, at the very least, you're able to kind of see for your own eyes that the bacteria has been taken away. And then when you're not using it, guess what? It's a completely sterile environment to hold your masks. And God willing, when we're through this nightmare, you can use it for something else. You know, it's a nice looking wallet. This one doesn't have our logo on it because it was a very first sample, but ours have our beautiful logo on it. And if corporations, for example, are looking to gift these as a welcome back when the offices do reopen, we're offering that as well with, say, Google could print their logo on the top and whatnot. So it's just a way to keep people safe.
Yeah. And I think even beyond COVID, like germs are germs, right? So you're always going to want to disinfect things as much as possible, you know, and God only knows how long we're going to have to be wearing these masks. So.
Right, exactly. And, you know, the only other thing is, I mean, you could use the traditional antiviral methods with sprays and whatnot, or the UV light. I have UV lights. Personally, I don't feel they're as effective as this. And, you know, I like having something that's convenient to take with me. But so, you know, for me, this is the fun stuff because I get to keep creating. And, you know, we also did a fanny pack for a bunch of the health frontline workers because they needed packs to put their PPE in, say the masks and whatnot. And so as we were creating it for one of our accounts, I'd said, so the frontline workers are putting their phones in these things too, right? And he said, yes. And I said, so they have their phone in a fanny pack up against their person for 8 hours. Yeah, they do. So I decided to line it with a Faraday type material that cuts out radiation by 80%.
Oh, wow.
You'll get a call coming in, but if you were to hold an EMF reader, there's no radiation or very little radiation coming through there.
Right.
So,
you don't want radiation up against your reproductive organs all day.
right. So, you know, I mean, this is one of those things where then you start going, well, we could be putting this in all our pockets, and maybe we should be changing the codes in the apparel world where any pocket that would be, or maybe it would be labeled as the cell phone pocket. And so you would know that that would be the safe pocket. And this hasn't been done before other than, you know, like the strict Faraday where everything's blocked. And to me, I try to think in terms of reality. That's not reality, you know. So 80% safer and useful is better than nothing.
For sure. Have you ever thought of doing something to help disinfect cell phones? Because I feel like my cell phone's like, I don't know, everybody's cell phone's gross. We touch it, we touch other things, and I always think about that.
It's a good point. I think somebody has, so I stayed away from it.
Okay, gotcha.
I do think, in fact, you can probably go on Amazon. I think somebody's come out with, or a few companies have come out with a box that you can put your cell phone in. But I mean, it's worth mentioning, right? Because that's cumbersome. So now you're thinking, can I travel? Can I, if I'm taking carry-on on a plane when we do travel, can I, you know, take UV? So it's so many questions, but, you know, maybe someone will come up with something hearing this.
Right. So you've come up with so many good ideas. It's just amazing. And you and I were talking about testing ideas. So in the United States, you have a year before you have to file your patent application if you make something public. So you can test your whatever you're creating for a year in the US before you file your patent application. Not so in other countries. So if you want to see if it's going to sell and you just want to sell it in the US, you can do the whole 9 yards and then file a year after your first public disclosure. But in Europe, you have to file immediately before you publicly disclose. But you were saying that you do use that as a strategy. So because you have so many ideas, some things you won't patent right away. You want to see how they do, right?
Well, for sure. And, this is a slightly newer avenue for me. I've always been a bit of an inventor, but owning the apparel business and with things being a more traditional route in the earlier years, I kind of put it on the back burner. And then, but I always had the bug. I came out with the first light up premium denim jeans in the world back in 2001. So there's been, but I put a bunch on the back burner, and then it was the past couple years. I started with the EquiSafe fire retardant blanket for horses with the GPS built in. And then after that, I got the bug and said, okay, what else? And so I started learning about patents. It was as an entrepreneur kind of starting from scratch and going, whoa, whole new world. How do we do this? And part of it was speaking with a lot of friends who are very familiar with patents, that are all fellow entrepreneurs that have experience. And I don't actually need to hire a lawyer for the provisional. I ended up anyway doing that because I wanted to be careful. But so often as I'm learning with this, what I'll do is if I think it's a really great idea that can make money, even if it's down the road, I'll usually try to at least get the idea out or have it put on our site or whatnot, so people are aware that, hey, this came from here. and then the next stage would be filing the provisional, whether we write it in-house or hire somebody to do that. And then, of course, I think that the key is when you get the provisional out, you've got a year to test it. So you should be ready to go to production at that point, is my thought, because you have a year to really test it, on the mass market level and see, is it working, is it not, before then going, to the next stage. But, I had to learn so much about this, because let's say you do the provisional and you think, okay, great, I have a year. Well, what happens if while you're selling within that year, you start getting really valuable feedback from your retailers? You know what? I want you to tweak this. I want you to tweak that. It would sell more if you could do this. Actually, the market's changed. So this is all great. And we have sales coming in, but now that provisional doesn't really mean much because we have to redo the provisional. We can't just take that to the patent, so it's a slippery slope.
Well, there's a couple ways to manage that.
Okay.
And one way is, if you do a claim with your provisional, a broad enough claim, it may cover everything you do along the way.
Right.
But it would take a patent attorney to figure that out for you. So what we advise clients, first of all, you're right that you want to actually patent what you're selling. So you could go with an invention to your manufacturing plant, because we had this happen to a client early on, and they could say, look, we can't make it the way you have it. You have to revise it. So then they have to revise it. And they had to do that 2 or 3 times. And what we did was provisionals all along the way. So they did the first provisional, and then we did another provisional 6 months later. Then we did another provisional 2 months after that. And then we finally did the actual utility patent, which is the one that the patent office looks at, which has to be done within a year of filing your provisional. So there's a couple of different ways to do it, but you're right. You want to make sure that you're patenting what you're selling. And if there's a lot of changes, you have to figure out how to cover that.
Right. And I think, as you know, I can't wait to speak with Richard, because I have so many questions going forward, because it is a new world. Mm-hmm. And I think it's got to be intimidating to a lot of new inventors on just learning, from the beginning to the end. One thing that I heard that I was a bit surprised about is that most patents get rejected the first time, unless that was my lawyer. It's just saying that.
That's a patent office's job. They look at it, they go, nah, sorry.
Right, but I hadn't been warned the first time, and I was like, oh my God, we failed. This is horrible. So it's really learning, and how many years it takes. It's as long to yield as a good crop of wine.
I know. So after that first rejection, which happens all the time, you have to go back and argue with the patent office. And that's where they're lawyers. So you really need an attorney to do that argument because they understand each other. And like with Richard and the people at the law firm, they talk to these people called examiners all the time. So they know each other and they know what these people are expecting. And so they can usually, we have a pretty high success rate for getting the patent applications through to the final patent. But you're right. It is a shock and people are like, what? No.
Right.
Yeah. And they sometimes cite ridiculous things because they look at what's already in the literature and what patents have already issued. And you might have like a, I don't know, support stand for something and they'll cite a paper cup. And you're like, what?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like I said, I can't wait to chat with you guys about things going forward, because I do feel this is one of those things you don't skimp on. You have to be in good hands. I think that, you guys are worth what you're paid for what you're doing, because it's difficult. So, and there's an art to it. And if you're doing it, you want to do it right. The only part that I know for sure that I can very confidently say is the market part, which is, make sure that it's something you're going to produce and make money doing, and that there's a need for. Have a thick skin and run it by a million people.
Absolutely. And you can have the best idea in the world and something everybody wants, but if you don't have the marketing, you're going to fall flat on your face. So
Right.
it's, and the trademark is part of that too, which is something that we do too. So Kenya is like a marketing expert. She's the media maven for iHeart. So she can speak to that as well. You're absolutely right. So you have to have those buckets of money for the different areas to really be a successful entrepreneur. And marketing is huge. Protecting your intellectual property is huge.
And I'm thinking first to market never hurts, so, I sometimes you have to just be bold and throw it out there. So.
Right. And you can do that in the US without a patent for a year, and then you can file your provisional after a year and then your utility another year later. So that's why the United States is such a great place for people to invent.
Right.
So how many things have you invented and taken to market?
Oh my gosh. Let me think here. So probably about 6.
And what have been your biggest challenges with that?
Oh my gosh, it depends. So the first, one of the first big ones was the EquiSafe blanket, which is, I'm an equestrian and my horse was affected by the California fires a few years back. And luckily he was fine, but I was out of town and I called the stables and I said, what's going on? Or, I heard the fires are coming or the horse is evacuated. And I was shocked because they'd said, well, the stables are close to catching on fire and the fire department's actually here, but they won't allow the evacuation trailers in because it's standard to block the roads from any commercial vehicles coming in, because it could, if say the commercial vehicle breaks down, then regular traffic is blocked. So they're not letting the evacuation trailers in, which means the horses are stuck. And the fire department is literally saying, set the horses loose or hose them down so they burn slower. And knock on wood, everything was okay. But I'm sure, again, everyone saw the news when the California fires hit 2 years ago, and horses were being set loose because there was no choice. And so that's sometimes what happens, which people don't understand. So the eureka moment went off in my head. I wasn't thinking dollar signs at all. That was not that product. That product was literally, somebody needs to create this and I know how to do it. So and that product was it was complicated from beginning to end for so many reasons. It was complicated because I wanted to make it affordable. I wanted to make it environmentally friendly, safe to humans, safe for the horses. So I had to think of every possible scenario that could go wrong. What if the horse is running and he gets caught on something? Okay, we need to make the back straps completely safe and quick release. So, and then teaching the factories something brand new that they didn't know. And I was so detail specific. I wanted to make sure that the thread was fire retardant, that the reflective strips were fire retardant. Then we had to do the GPS factor. The GPS needed to be forged. So learning all of that. So So that one was really tough because it was all of the composition making it affordable and then convincing a world that's a little bit more conservative to adopt something new. So in order to actually get the accounts, I went to the best ones because I felt that there was an urgency to get this to market. And I flew into the account myself. I didn't want to put it in the hands of a salesperson because this was my baby. And they said, we love the idea. We're not taking on any new clients. And I said, no problem. I brought a blowtorch. Do you want to see me blowtorch the blanket over my arm? And they were like, hang on, we're grabbing our sales manager. Let's go outside for this. So, so that was, but I mean, all of them have been a little bit challenging because when you're first to market, even if it's the best idea since sliced bread, you have some convincing to do.
You do, and that can be the tough part. And entrepreneurs just have to keep going, though, right? Because eventually it will catch on. So, Kenya, I was going to ask you, like, what marketing tips do you usually have for entrepreneurs really trying to get the word out?
I would just say the first thing is like to really just know your product and the benefits of your product well, because if you know them well, then you're going to be able to express that to your target market. People are never really buying anything, right? They're buying benefits. So if you're really able to know them and articulate them properly, then, the sell is going to be easy. And, you already know because you sold out in 2 days. So obviously the benefits of your product were, known and people resonated with that and it converted.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I think we're at the end of our time for this segment, but this has been fabulous. Listeners, if you're just tuning in, the podcast comes out tomorrow. You have to hear Dalia because, wow, this lady is amazing. And stay tuned for the other people that are coming up on the show. It's always just so fascinating to hear all these new ideas and these new companies. So you are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and Kenya Gibson filling in for Richard today and our special guest, Dalia MacPhee, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710, the Voice of New York, with Elizabeth Gearhart and Kenya Gibson as your host today. And Kenya, you're going to introduce our next guest.
Yes, so for our executive spotlight today, we have Gabriella SANTANIELLOW. I hope I got that right. And Gabriella is the CEO and founder of A-Line Partners. Gabriella, welcome to Passage to Profit.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
We're good. So tell us all about A-Line Partners.
Okay, so A-Line Partners is a retail research firm, and we conduct on-the-ground research. So I have a team of people in the malls across the country in 10 different markets, and they are gathering data. The data we gather is mostly on publicly traded companies. And then I provide my research to institutional investors, so hedge funds, mutual funds, and they use that as part of their investment process. So typically they have the numbers down. We call it the mosaic theory. So they they take data from all different data sources and they use that to decide whether or not they're going to invest in a stock.
Oh, wow. It sounds like you're gathering some really important information.
It's important at the end of the day, but when you're actually doing it, it's down to just really understanding the stores, the product, the promotional activity, just the positioning of the retailer, the consumer, and you roll that up, and then that's what the investors use to take a look at the companies and if they decide to invest or not.
So Gabriella, when did you start this company?
So A-Line started about 6 years ago. Prior to that, I was at a stock brokerage firm for about 6 years as well, doing something very similar. And then prior to that, I was in the industry. So I started out in the fashion industry, and I was primarily in wholesale sales and distribution. And I was a sales rep for a company called Notori that did sleepwear. And then I was at Massimo before they were in Target, when they were in department stores, and then moved on to companies like Nautica Jeans Company and then Ralph Lauren Children's Wear. And I would primarily manage department stores and then also the Pacific Rim, where I did some product development.
And so what gave you the idea to start this?
So it happened, it was a little bit by luck. I had some friends who were in finance, and they would always call me and ask me what was going on in the industry and just try to get my insights. And then I was at Ralph Lauren, and I had a little bit of a break. I was based in San Francisco at the time. I moved down to Southern California. A friend of mine worked at a bank, and he kept asking me questions. And then finally he said, I gave my boss your phone number. So they called me in, and it was going to be a consulting job. And then they said, no, we'd like you to come on full time. So it was quite a change for me. And I have to say rather humbling, because it was going from being in the fashion industry, and then all of a sudden you're in finance, and I had to get my licenses. So I had to prepare for the Series 7, the Series 86, and the Series 87 to become a research analyst so that I could actually talk to investors. So I had, until then, I had not had major failures in my life, but those tests were really trying. And I'm not going to lie, I failed a couple times. It was quite humbling. But it was actually fantastic, and just a valuable experience. And I was really lucky because the stock brokerage firm was very entrepreneurial, and they really supported me in what I was doing. And it took off from there. And that's how I was able to transition into doing what I'm doing now. So.
Wow. So how have things changed in your line of work since the pandemic, or have they not?
Oh, they've changed a lot. So prior to the pandemic, we were, my team, we would go out to the malls, and we were looking at stores like all mall-based retailers. So we were at Lululemon and Anthropologie, and I was covering what they call soft lines. And when all the malls closed, it was, I was like, what am I going to do? And all the women who work for me, we're a team of women. They all said after about a week, I'm absolutely going crazy homeschooling my kids. Please let me go out. And I was like, okay, let's look at what's open. Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Target, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever was open, we were being as safe as we could. There was a 1 week there where we didn't go out, but I started reporting on companies that were an entirely different profile from what I had been covering. And my clients loved it. And it actually opened new doors for me, because you have certain teams that, hedge funds and mutual funds that cover what they call soft lines, which is everything really in the mall. And then you have entirely different teams that are covering these stores that are off mall, and they call them broad lines. So it was great, actually. And, I was really nervous about it. And we did the pivot, and it ended up working, thank goodness. So I'm happy.
Gabriella, you started with some industry knowledge, but pretty much from ground zero, and built this business yourself. What do you think was the most important factor? What helped you be successful?
Well, when I was at the stock brokerage firm and really starting this, the one thing I did love about this company, it's called Wedbush Securities in Los Angeles, was there were a lot of women in management positions. And I remember one time the head of sales pulled me over, and she said, you need to just go with your gut, trust your intuition. If you have a feeling of something, we want conviction. That's what everybody's looking for. And so I really tried to just practice that. So if I, went into a store, I had a feeling about something, I just had to go with my gut, obviously supported by data and my past experiences, but really go with it and have conviction. And that really just taught me to persevere. And I ended up building a really nice following. And one day I was at a trade show with a client, and he just turned to me and said, if you want to go out on your own, I'll support you. You could do this in a subscription service, and it would be, it'd be great for you. And one thing about finance in Los Angeles is you have to wake up at 3 a.m. And you have to be in the office by 4. So the idea of being able to, get up at maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock was very appealing. So I set a plan. Within a year, I was gonna branch out on my own, and I did. And so it was, I look back on it, and it was a sort of bit of a leap of faith, and I took some clients with me, and it was a little nerve-wracking, but it ended up working out. So
would you say it was your deep industry knowledge that really helped you succeed then?
I would say that helped. Yes, that was really it.
So how does someone come to work with you? Like how are you acquiring clients, and what's a good client for you?
So my clients are the investors. I'm affiliated with a firm that deals with, I'm considered an independent research provider. They hold my licenses, and I also hired them to do my sales and marketing. So they're the ones who go out and approach the clients for me. When I initially launched, it was all the people I knew who ended up launching with me and really giving me that support, which was great. But obviously you need to take it to the next level, which is why I ended up with this company called IRC Securities. And then for the people in the field, it's been Craigslist, referrals, a site called The Every Girl, where I would just post that, this is a retail specialist job. And I have a lot of, great people who everybody has retail experience, and they love going to the mall. So thank goodness.
Yeah, I actually was just trying to find out the name of this individual. I was doing a store tasting at one point here in New York in the West Village, and a gentleman that came and tried my brand wrote a book on kind of like the future of commerce being all about women, but he actually has a consumer insights company. So I was really curious to see, how your company differs from his, and then if you'd ever consider actually marketing to consumer brands versus just investors. Because what he does is actually install cameras in Targets and the Total Wines, and then monitors consumer behavior. So like Brown-Forman, which owns Jack Daniels, is one of his clients. And literally they just watch what customers do when they go into the liquor store and how they interact with the Jack Daniels. And you told me that basically it's one of the most loyal consumers is the Jack Daniels consumer, because they go into the store, they grab the Jack and they leave, and they don't browse or look for anything else. So this is just, it's data that's so valuable for big brands as well as it would be for investors. So I'm just
curious. I would love to work with retailers. The only issue is that I'm licensed through FINRA, which is the financial regulating body. And if I get information on the retailers, there's always the risk that I'm going to pass on material, non-public information or something to investors. So unfortunately, I have to sort of keep them separate. If it's a company that I don't cover, certainly, yes, I can do it. Or even if it's a private company. So I've dealt also with my client base have been private equity investors. If they're looking to, invest in a private company and they want some due diligence, I've worked with them on analyzing the competitive space and the consumer and doing, those sort of market studies. But unfortunately, in that realm, I have to keep it separate.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we've come to the end of this segment.
Okay.
Stay tuned, stick around, and we'll try to get Dalia back in with questions too. And if you missed any of this, the podcast is coming out tomorrow. But Kenya, do you want to do our segments quickly before we go to break? So Kenya has a segment called Power Move.
Yeah, totally. And and Elizabeth is going to talk about Fireside. So, interestingly enough, you had Effie had mentioned Jack Daniels, and we're going to be talking about a women entrepreneur by the name of Fawn Weaver. She is the CEO of Uncle Nearest. So if you never heard of Uncle Nearest, she based the company, it's a whiskey company that she created based on the story of Nathan Nearest Green. He was an enslaved Black man who actually taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey. So there's a great backstory that's there. She did a lot of research, and really just found that there was a great story there, and there was a great market, and there was not a lot of women who have tapped into the whiskey market. So we're working on getting her up here to Passage to Profit in the future, but she's got an amazing story. She started this whiskey company not too long ago, probably back in 2016. It's grown leaps and bounds. She did all the necessary research to start it. She went out to Lynchburg, Tennessee, where the Jack Daniels is made, and did a lot of research similar to what Gabriella does for a lot of her investors, and just really found her niche in the market and created a really powerful brand story based on the history of this gentleman. So if you get an opportunity to check her out, she's featured in Forbes. Her name is Fawn Weaver, and she is our highlight on Power Move today.
That is a power move. Wow, what a great story to go with her product, and what a great way to brand it. And there's always room for another whiskey.
This is true, especially now.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about Fireside. So people who have listened to this show or know me know that almost a year ago now, I got the idea in October 2019 to start a video directory I was going to start with lawyers, and I expanded it to small businesses once COVID hit. So what I do for Fireside is I interview business owners, such as you guys, and I ask you questions about your business and a little bit about yourself if you want to say a little bit about yourself. And I tell people, really on video, you have 10 seconds. So people say the 30-second pitch, that's kind of gone in this day and age. You have 10 seconds to wow me. So say something really cool. So what I have decided to say about Fireside is, do you want to be a part of history while being a part of the future too? So this is the only, or the first and only one of its kind online video directory for small businesses. And the interviews I do really help you dig into your story. So to Kenya's point, I'd love to get people's stories there, because if somebody's figuring they want to hire a professional to help them, like a business coach or something, they want to know them a little bit. People that are product oriented, I encourage them to show their product, how they're using it on the video and everything. And I've been building it, and COVID has actually helped a little bit because everybody's on Zoom now and people aren't afraid to talk to me on Zoom and have me record it. It's like they barely even know it's being recorded. So I'm still in the building phase. So anybody that wants to put their business on Fireside, it's fireside.directory. It's no .com. And I have the Fireside Directory YouTube channel too. So.
And it's a really brilliant idea. I think people really want to get to know somebody that they want to work with or they want to hire. So I love the video component because it really gives you an opportunity to hear from the person, get their story, and really evaluate if they're a right fit for you. So it's a really interactive experience that allows you to pick the right person.
Yeah, so anybody that wants to be on it, I want it to be the Wikipedia of small business on video. I want it to be everybody. So, and I have one person from England, from London on there already. So it is.
So you're international now.
Hey. So with that, we have to go to our next break. But when we come back, we will be talking to Effie and then Stacy, and they both have really great stories to tell. And if you're just tuning in, we've heard two incredible stories from people that have started businesses and been very successful, and a little bit about how they did it. So you can hear them on our podcast tomorrow. So you are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show, with Elizabeth Gearhart and Kenya Gibson today on WOR 710, the Voice of New York. Well, welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710, the Voice of New York. We have just spoken to two fascinating women who are just knocking it out of the ballpark with their companies. And now we have someone coming up who made something near and dear to my heart. Anyway, her name is Effie Panagopoulos, and I'm going to let her talk about her product. Welcome, Effie.
Thanks for having me. Effie Panagopoulos, I'm the first Greek woman in history to start a liquor brand. I also work with Greece's first female distiller. And the product I make is called Kleos Mastika Spirit. Kleos is a Greek liqueur made from an ancient Greek superfood called mastika. Mastika is a resin that comes from a tree that grows only on one island in the entire planet. That's the island of Chios. So it's what you would call a PDO. It's a protected designation of origin ingredient, protected by the EU. In fact, they've tried to plant trees on the northern part of the island. The trees grow, but they don't produce the same aromatic sap. And this sap is a superfood. It kills H. pylori, which is the bacteria that causes peptic ulcers, gastric cancer, acid reflux. It's antibacterial, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. healing properties for the stomach are retained in liquor form. By no means am I, selling this as a health product. It is alcohol at the end of the day, but very much an extension of a healthy lifestyle. Besides all the health benefits of mastica, more importantly, it as an ingredient in this spirit that I make, it's absolutely delicious and it's fabulous in cocktails. It's been called bartender's olive oil by the press because it's so versatile. It literally mixes 1-to-1 with every base spirit on the back bar, but then it kind of does that double duty where you can drink it by itself. So I kind of say it's, bartender's olive oil meets a very exotic alternative to a vodka or a gin.
Wow, the bottle's beautiful.
Thank you. Took me a very long time to produce and source this packaging, and it is the bane of my existence. I'm moving production again to Europe because I've had some really bad experiences with the supply chain in China. The fun stuff of entrepreneurship.
Where can people buy it?
Yeah, that was my first question.
I'm like, I need to try it right away.
Real easy, just on my website, drinkcleos.com. There's a where to buy link and you can see most of the stores. I have one retailer that ships to 12 states. And I'm actively selling in New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, and then Florida as well. So this year I'm looking to open up California officially, although I do ship to California online. But I'm looking to open up California, Illinois, and Florida wide, as well as DC, Maryland.
Well, I'm going to buy a bottle for Richard for his birthday in November because he likes trying these new tastes. What does it taste like? Do you have any just comparisons?
Yeah, so when I did blind tastings with consumers and with American consumers, the most common tasting note that came back was actually cucumber. Cucumber, sweet tea comes up quite often. People will sometimes think it's like a sweeter gin, and then cocktail bartenders very often say carrots. And I know this sounds completely bizarre, but at the end of the day, it's both vegetal and earthy and minerally, but then a touch sweet. So it's been compared, by kind of like sommeliers, these very nerdy palates. I've said root vegetables quite often, celery, dill, aloe. It's really very complex and very layered. And that's what's also so cool about it. It's not a one note like your classic cordials, like something like Cointreau is an orange liqueur. It's very straightforward. With mastica, when Americans first try it, they always think they know what it is. So they're like, oh, wait, this is, and I'm like, you've never tried it before. So that's it's a very kind of fun taste experience. And then what's also cool about mastica is once you get it into your DNA, then you actually know it to identify it because it's also used as a spice in culinary. So chefs like Daniel Boulud in New York, Grana Katz from Alinea, which is 3 Michelin stars in Chicago. These are chefs that actually use mastica as a spice as well. So it's the type of thing where, really high level chefs know about it. Cool mixologists know about it. And then Greek women cook with mastica at home. So like our Easter bread tsoureki is made with mastica. Our New Year's Eve cake vasilopita is always made with mastica. So I like to think I've kind of taken this very secret classic Greek thing and I'm really trying to mass market it. And it's never been done before.
It's very smart. There's a lot of benefits, and I'm sure you know this because you're from Greece, to the Mediterranean diet. You know what I mean? And I think of
absolutely,
it's so undermarketed. And like, so when you're sitting here and you're talking, I'm just like, wow, this is really, really brilliant and really helpful to people because there's so many benefits to the Mediterranean diet that I can go on, but you're on the right track.
There's hundreds of published medical studies proving mastica's action against H. pylori. It's a natural remedy for Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, very sexy stuff. Like I said, I'm not promoting this as a health product, but you drink a couple of ounces of mastica, you'll burp up a little bit. In Greece, we used to drink this as an aperitif or as a digestif. Whereas I'm very much just kind of promoting it as a cocktail ingredient or as a sipping spirit.
So Effie, why did you start this company? What was your inspiration?
I don't know if we have enough time on this podcast to talk about it. It was quite a Sisyphean journey. I've been in the liquor industry for almost 20 years. I worked for Bacardi, for Remy. I consulted for tons of startup brands, but I was the national brand ambassador for Metaxa, which is a Greek brandy. That job brought me back to Greece. I was in Mykonos in 2008. Everyone around me was doing shots of mastika, and this was to American tourists, not Greeks. And I tasted it. And, I thought to myself, oh my God, this is delicious. Why don't we have this yet in the United States? And I grew up with mastika as a spoon dessert. So they take mastika, mash it up with a bunch of sugar and glycerin, and it looks like fluff. So it's the stuff you swirl around in water and suck on it like a lollipop. So I knew the flavor. So like I said, once you know that flavor, I was like, wait a minute, I know this. This is like what I had with my grandmother in the village. And I'm like, they make alcohol from this. And so that was kind of my eureka moment. And, as I'm sure many of the women can appreciate here, I dealt with a lot of nonsense. Being a female, starting a product in a very male-dominated industry, I started off consulting for an existing brand out of Greece that was obviously owned by a man. I helped him get importation and distribution in the United States. And then he did not pay my consulting fee and then thought I would work for him for a $3,000 a month paltry retainer with no equity. And I kind of was like, no way in hell am I going to build this brand for somebody for peanuts. And then on top of it, I really wanted to kind of improve upon the category. So like they have very nondescript packaging. The liquid was excessively sweet, not particularly refined and sophisticated. So I really also wanted to kind of create the super premium, the luxury mastika brand to be the brand that's going to be on every back bar, There was a brand called Saint Germain that launched in 2007 in New York, and it lit up like wildfire. I'm sure some of the ladies know this brand. It's an elderflower liqueur. It opened up a whole new world of cocktail opportunities. Very light, very floral, but it's not the type of thing you would drink by itself. So when I tasted mastika for the first time, and by the way, that brand sold to Bacardi for 150 million after about 6 years. So when I tasted mastika for the first time, I thought to myself, like, well, this could be the next Saint Germain, and I want to be the one to make this happen.
I think it's brilliant. I think, Effie, when things resume and it's safe, we should do your next release party in Greece, and we should all show up there. I'll provide the dresses and the gowns. No, it looks great. It actually, to me, it looks like I'm looking at it, and the way you described it, it's very passionate. It sounds like Greek islands in a bottle.
Absolutely.
It looks like between like a cologne bottle or cologne / perfume and this incredible liqueur.
I say it's your Greek vacation in a glass.
Mhm.
Right, exactly. That's how I felt just looking at it and the way you described it.
Is it on the back bar at Milos in New York City?
It is indeed, yes.
Oh,
Wow.
okay. I'm so excited. That's my favorite restaurant.
It's also on the menu at Dante, which is rated the #1 bar in the world's 50 best bars list. The Dante Martini has Cleos in it with gin and vermouth.
I'm interested in how, throughout the years, like you built relationships, and when you decided to go out on your own, did you tap into any of those relationships, or how did you get funding, or sort of, did you bootstrap it? What was your strategy?
I consulted for tons of startup brands, and in the past, it's like you get these brands where I'm kind of like, who gave you money and why are you doing it? Again, I'm going to be confidently humble. Whereas in my case, like I've got a stellar, beautiful product, but I'm not, bankrolled or anything. Right. So I started off doing a friends and family and literally just put together a list of anyone I knew who might have money or was connected to somebody with money. And I kind of started like that.
Wow.
But in terms of, relationships, that's the strength, that I bring to the proposition is I've been in the industry for 20 years. A lot of people are like, oh, well, what about your distribution? I'm like, I got that, I don't need help on distribution. I already pretty much have a strong idea of who I want to hire in all my key markets. I just need the capital. So, I've raised about 500,000 in friends and family, not all at once. And pre-COVID, I tried to kick off a $2 million raise and then had to stop. And now I'm just kind of raising like a $200,000 bridge just to get through COVID because the VCs are really sharky right now. So I don't want to raise it down round. Kind of just get through it and then go from there and raise the big dollars.
I'm excited about this.
Drinkcleos.com, and that's also the Instagram.
Everybody listening to the podcast, keep your eye on these women because they are the Warren Buffetts of the next decade or soon, I hope. So we have to go to a break, but stay tuned because this next presenter has something very important for you to know about. Really, especially in this time of COVID, particularly. So listen for the podcast tomorrow. If you want to rehear any of this, look for us on YouTube. If you want to see what we look like, it's really been a fun show, but I am so excited for Stacy right after this break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody, to Passage to Profit. I am Kenya Gibson. Super honored to be here, filling in for Richard Gearhart today, along with Elizabeth, my lovely co-host. And this has been a really, really, really great show. We've had a lot of inspiring stories on today and a lot of great women entrepreneurs. And I'm really pleased to bring on our next presenter. Her name is Stacy Kirk, and her platform or product is Posture.
Yeah, sure. So Posture is a cybersecurity and compliance program as a service. We have a platform that solves a business critical need for small and mid-sized businesses, which is to be secure and compliant, but to do so quickly and affordably. Our mission is to help these small and mid-sized businesses really thrive and have impact. But in this day and age, that definitely requires to have an organization to have cyber resiliency and also compliance as their competitive advantage. And we found that there really is no shortage of cybersecurity tools out there, as well as high-priced consultants, but they really don't have what they need to get it done because as a small business, you're wearing 400 hats to try to make your business grow. And so our platform brings together expert advice, advisory, training, policy generation, and it's all wrapped in our proprietary methodology that reduces the time that it takes to become compliant from what would normally take 1 year down to a month and what would normally cost $20,000 down to $2,000.
Excellent. And you do HIPAA compliance, especially.
Yeah. And so part of the challenges that we've seen this year with COVID is that cybersecurity is even more important for healthcare organizations. Since the COVID has started, there has been nearly doubling of the attacks against healthcare organizations. And so we wanted to make sure that as we launched, we really focused first on the compliance that had not only some of the harshest regulations or the most difficult regulations, but also served a very pressing need, not only for healthcare providers, but for all the companies that work, business associates, health tech that work with organizations. And so we offer HIPAA compliance, and we really walk them through not only getting the policies generated very quickly, but the training that you need for every person that works within your organization. And we do so in a I think, a very cool way with very short anime videos that are interesting and relevant, and a learning management system that keeps everything organized. I'm a small business owner even before I started Posture. And I've got to tell you, just being able to say it's happening and I don't have to worry about it or remind people or track evidence is just been so valuable for our clients so far.
Great. What size organizations do you work with?
Yeah, well, as this is not my first company, as I mentioned, I have a tech consulting firm that does custom software development and testing and digital transformation. And so what I found was that I worked, what we did there is we worked with small businesses all the way to Fortune 500, Fortune 100. But what has become our passion is really the small and mid-sized business space. Because as I talk with them about their challenges, each one of them would say to me, what can you do to help me with security? We need help. We're drowning here. There's actually 4 million unfilled jobs in cybersecurity. And a lot of people think about software development and they think about tech jobs, but cybersecurity globally is very hard to fill. And even if you do hire people, you're hiring people that still need help because they're pretty new, 1 or 2 years out. And so working with the companies that are employees of, just to kind of answer your question, employees of 1, which is kind of like a solo entrepreneur, up to 500, really struggle. They can't attract the top talent often from in cybersecurity, and they don't necessarily have $100, $200, $300,000 to invest in building out a cyber resilient program.
Yeah, and it must be a very complex space because you say cybersecurity, and I'm like, I know what that means, but I don't, to be honest with you, you know, so I'm sure that you can help people understand the importance of it and why it's so critical to their business.
Yeah, I mean, some of the numbers are pretty scary. 50% of small and mid-sized businesses said that they've been attacked in the last year. If a small mid-sized business is attacked, there's a 60% chance that they're not going to last more than 6 months. At the same time, every time we experience a data or privacy problem, they create a new regulation. And in the last 10 years, there's been a 270% increase in the number of regulations. And as a small business owner, even with my background, 20-year background in technology, I still would think of cybersecurity and go, what do I do? What was, I think, the scariest is that a few years ago, my company was attacked. And in just a split second as an entrepreneur, I was like, oh my gosh, everything that I've built, all those sleepless nights and all of that hard work could be gone. And I was fortunate. We had monitoring in place and it alerted us right away. But even in those few hours, there were thousands of dollars in charges that we incurred. And luckily we were able to explain it away with AWS and get everything resolved. But imagine if we didn't have that in place, and imagine if we didn't know what to do and how to handle it. And so really building this company it's really important that we give kind of a level playing field for small and mid-sized businesses to really have a competitive advantage. A lot of Fortune 500, they don't want to work with businesses that don't have a cybersecurity program. It's too much of a risk. You hear about all of these large corporations that are getting breached, and often that has to do with third-party vendors. And so we want to be able to say, it's okay. You don't have to know anything about cybersecurity. Come to us. We have the advisory portion of it. We're not just a tool, because clearly you can't just give someone a tool and they figure it out. And that's kind of what we learned in our couple of years of trials and betas to figure out. You really need an advisor, someone that you can call and be like, what does ransomware mean? It's all over my screen.
Well, first of all, thanks for keeping us all safe. But I was curious, does this, because, as you know, so many people are moving to mobile. So what do you think about that? And does this include protection on, all the mobile devices as well?
Yeah, well, we start with the organization first. So people sometimes say, okay, well, which servers are you protecting? Or, what devices are you protecting? The majority of breaches happen because of some type of human intervention. And so we start at the base. We start with making sure your organization has the policies in place. It has the training in place to make good decisions and build cyber hygiene so that it's an ongoing culture that you're creating. And then from there, we have this incredible marketplace that we don't want to create it all. It's just, there's so many good tools out there that we create a marketplace so that you can say, hey, my entire company is on mobile devices. What what can you recommend for us for a mobile device?
Okay.
And so we have those partnerships. And we also go out to partners that are within the price range that we think small, medium businesses can afford. Because there's some products that are, $100,000. And that's just not reasonable and feasible. So we make sure that the partnerships we make are feasible, quick, easy to integrate, so that they can, as a small business, you don't have to worry about it. We can just help you deploy it and move on.
I'm just wondering, like with the instances with like these small and medium-sized companies, and with, just sort of protecting them, and what's the vulnerability with those companies? I mean, obviously I'm a very, very small business. But I'm just curious because I'm like, I kind of come up thinking like, oh, well, nobody's going to bother to, attack me, and sort of, so I'm just curious as to, what the vulnerability is, for some of these really small companies, and like, how small do you go?
We have clients that are just one person team.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be surprised. Half of the attacks, at least in the United States, are against small and mid-sized businesses. Hackers look for opportunity. They know that small, mid-sized businesses don't have, the firewall set up. They know that they don't all have antivirus on every device. And so they use that as leverage to attack. And so what we think is, what is proven to be the strongest strongest way to fight against this and be resilient is really through training, and having policies. And it's very surprising. I mean, you hear about these ransomware attacks. A lot of those come through phishing. You're reading an email, and this happens even at my company. It happens every 2 months. Someone uses my name, and they send an email to my staff, and it says, I need you to get on this urgently and click on this link and go for it. And if it wasn't for the training my team has, and they send it to me like, Stacy, this isn't you, right? But imagine if your team wasn't continually being reminded of these type of attacks. 90% of home remote workers now are not secure. We all moved remotely or online, but we don't have a security officer at our house to tell us, hey, you need to change your firewall password or your Wi-Fi password. A lot of our young children, including mine, think it's okay to jump on my computer and download a video game or something like that. So all of that is part of the training that we provide, just so people are aware of what they have to do, even if it's just one person in the company.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, starting, my business, and I have friends who are entrepreneurial as well, and I don't know, that needs to be part of an entrepreneurial like startup packet or something, so that everybody knows that it doesn't matter what size you are, that you're vulnerable to attacks. So
are you just the type of person that their brain goes to tech and it's easy for you? Like, how did you get into tech?
Yeah.
I do think I'm wired to, I've always been wired to enjoy computers. Like from the age of 7, I asked my parents to buy me a Commodore 64 so I could write my name Stacy and say, run Stacy, and just watch my name just go across the screen. So I've been a nerd for a very long time. I did study computer science, and I wanted an industry field, and we've got women here, so I'll just say I wanted something where I knew I would always have a job, that it was probably not going to, people wouldn't fire me, not that I'm not a good employee, but they wouldn't fire me over silly stuff. I'd never have to, if someone, mistreated me, I could say, you're losing out. I know I'm in demand. Bye, see you later. So I think there was a couple reasons why I enjoyed tech, but definitely I enjoy problem solving. And it doesn't always have to be technology. And that's kind of where Posture is trying to get it right. We're not just saying, hey, here's a tool, just log in and all your cybersecurity issues will go away. We are humans. And a lot of, we have to take that part and remember that humans make mistakes, and they need conversation and they need understanding. So I think I enjoy bringing those two worlds together.
Excellent. And what's your website?
Our website is postured.io. So think of good posture, cyber hygiene, postured.io.
With that, we have to go to another break, but we're going to come back for a quick wrap up. And if you're just tuning into the radio, WOR 710, where this show plays, you can catch the podcast tomorrow. I think this has been a fantastic show, a lot of variety, but a lot of very cool stuff and very innovative and inventive things going on. And we will be right back after this message. Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710, the Voice of New York, with Elizabeth Gearhart and our special co-host today, Kenya Gibson. And if you want to reach Kenya, it's Kenya Gibson with a P at iHeartMedia.com. iHeartMedia has excellent advertising possibilities, radio, digital media, everything. And Kenya is the person to talk to about that. But right now, I want to ask Dalia if she has any final thoughts on the show and, again, what your website is so people can find you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I think Fireside, it sounds brilliant. I'm actually going to go check out your directory. Okay. And I do think I do want to be part of the future. So thanks again. And I think the whole concept is brilliant. This is where we're moving. And as far as checking us out, you can simply go to the website, which is DaliaMacPhee.com, DALIA MacPhee, MacPhee.com.
Wonderful. And you have a lot of things on there. So it's definitely worth it. If you just like looking at clothes and dresses, it's definitely worth going to. And then we had Gabriella. So Gabriella, do you want to tell us your website and any thoughts on the show?
Sure. So my website is alinepartners.com. And just final thoughts. I mean, it was really an honor to be part of the first all-female podcast. And so I'm really appreciative of it. And just as far as just all the entrepreneurs out there, I mean, I think you've got to, build your experience and then just don't be afraid to take the leap. I mean, I think if you're well prepared, got a little bit of being well prepared and then a little bit of just not and jumping into it. And I think if, just have to be willing to take the chance. So.
Excellent. So Effie, your website and your product and how people can find you.
It's drinkcleos.com. So DRINKKLEOS. The Instagram is the same. It's at drinkcleos. I pretty much answer most of those messages. You can communicate with me directly there. And again, if you go to the website, there's a where to buy link, shipping to 16 states now. Kleos Mastika Spirit. It's a Greek liqueur made from a superfood called mastika.
Excellent. And Stacy?
You can find us at postured.io, postured.io. You can follow us on all social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Postured Up. And words of wisdom is, it doesn't matter how small you are. It's always important to make sure you understand the basics of cybersecurity. If that's not through us, there's definitely a wealth of information online. So take the time to learn it.
Excellent. And Kenya, final thoughts.
Yeah, I just was, excited to be a part of this today. Got to talk about some of my favorite things, fashion, cocktails, and got to learn a whole lot too, just about data and the importance of cybersecurity. So, and this was great to have this all women female empowerment session. I felt really good just kind of getting to know everybody. And it's great to see other women who are doing great things. So keep up the good work.
I thought this was amazing today. And woman power. Let's go, girls.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can find Passage to Profit on social media. We'd really love it if people would subscribe to our YouTube channel because we're trying to build that up. And it is Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on YouTube. But we're also on Facebook and Instagram at Passage to Profit Show and on Twitter at Passage to Profit. And our podcast, of course, is on iHeart, is Passage to Profit. So we would like to also, before we go, thank our incredible producer at iHeart, Noah Fleischman. So you've been listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventors Show with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our guest host, Kenya Gibson. Our guest today was Dalia MacPhee, and our executive spotlight was Gabriella Santanella, and we had Effie Panagopoulos and Stacy Kirk. We will see you next week for another great show. Keep listening.